Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Earth battleship Valkyrie. His eyes moved across the glowing screens and displays that covered the walls. The ship had been traveling through deep space for 3 weeks now, patrolling the outer edges of known territory. Everything had been quiet until this moment. "Commander, we're picking up something strange," said Lieutenant Amy Carter. She worked at the communications station, her fingers moving quickly across the controls. "It's a distress signal. I've never seen this pattern before." Jake walked over to her station. He was a tall man with short dark hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Years of military service had taught him to stay calm during emergencies. "Where is it coming from?" "The Helion system," Amy replied. Her face looked worried as she studied the incoming data. "The signal is weak, but our computers are translating it. It's from the Valar people. They're calling for help." Jake felt his stomach tighten. He knew about the Valar. Everyone in the human fleet did. They were peaceful creatures who lived on a planet covered in ammonia oceans. Their bodies looked like jellyfish, floating gracefully through their low-gravity world. 20 years ago, the Valar had been the first alien species to make contact with Earth. They had welcomed human explorers with kindness and curiosity instead of weapons and fear. The Valar had taught humanity about the Galactic Concordat, a union of peaceful species that had existed for 300 years. More than 100 different alien races worked together, sharing knowledge and resources. They had rules about not starting wars and helping each other during emergencies. The Valar trusted these rules completely. They had no military ships or weapons because they believed the Concordat would protect them. "What does the message say?" Jake asked. Amy listened through her neural link, which connected her brain directly to the ship's computer systems. Her face went pale. "They're under attack. The Kresh Dominion is bombing their cities. The Valar shields have failed. They're asking for immediate help from any Concordat ship in range." She paused and looked up at Jake. "Commander, this message was sent 2 hours ago." Jake's jaw clenched. The Kresh were a species of reptilian warriors who believed that strength was the only thing that mattered. For decades, they had been testing the Concordat's borders, seeing how far they could push before someone pushed back. But attacking a member world directly was an act of war. It broke every treaty and agreement that held the Concordat together. "Sound battle stations," Jake ordered. His voice was steady and cold. "Calculate a jump to the Helion system immediately, and get me Admiral Ben Parker on Earth Command right now." The bridge erupted into controlled activity. Officers moved to their stations. Warning lights flashed red throughout the ship. The Valkyrie's engines began powering up to full capacity, preparing for the jump through hyperspace that would take them across light years in minutes. Within 60 seconds, Admiral Parker's face appeared on the main view screen. He was an older man with gray hair and a lined face that showed his years of experience. Parker had fought in Earth's last major war before humanity reached the stars. He understood combat in ways that most Concordat species could never imagine. Jake quickly explained the situation. "Sir, the Valar are under attack. We're the closest human ship. I'm requesting permission to engage." Parker was quiet for a moment. His eyes showed the calculations running through his mind. "The Concordat Council will need days to authorize a military response. They'll want to send diplomats first, try to negotiate, form committees to study the situation. By the time they finish talking, the Valar will all be dead." "That's what I thought, sir. We have to act now." "The Valkyrie is a strong ship, Jake, but it's just one vessel. The Kresh don't attack unless they're sure they can win. They probably sent an entire invasion fleet to Helion." "You'll be outnumbered." Jake nodded. He had already considered this. "I understand the risk, sir." Parker's expression hardened. "You won't be alone for long. I'm authorizing a full battle group deployment. The Thunderchild, Warhammer, and Razorback will jump to your position as soon as they can. Captain Lisa Grant is mobilizing the carrier squadron from Mars Station. She'll bring 40 fighters and the support ships." A cold feeling of satisfaction settled in Jake's chest. Humanity had learned hard lessons during its first years in space. The other alien species had looked at humans and seen weak creatures. They saw beings from a planet with comfortable gravity and mild temperatures. They didn't understand Earth's true nature. Scientists classified Earth as a Class 12 death world. It was a planet so hostile and dangerous that simply growing up there created warriors. Earth had predators that could kill with teeth and claws. It had diseases that swept through populations. It had weather that could freeze or burn, earthquakes that shattered cities, and oceans that swallowed ships. Every human alive today was descended from ancestors who had survived all of these threats. Other species evolved on gentle worlds with light gravity and peaceful environments. They became scientists and artists and philosophers. Humans evolved in constant danger. They became hunters and fighters and survivors. This difference showed in everything they did, especially in how they fought wars. "Understood, Admiral," Jake said. "What are your orders until the fleet arrives?" Parker leaned forward, and his voice became hard as steel. "You will engage the enemy immediately. Don't wait for reinforcements. Show the Kresh what happens when they threaten our friends. Show them what Deathworlders do to bullies who attack peaceful people." "Yes, sir." Jake felt a fierce pride in his chest. This was why humans had joined the Concordat, not to conquer or rule, but to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The communication ended. Jake turned to his crew. Every person on the bridge was looking at him, waiting for orders. These men and women had trained in Earth's punishing gravity. They had learned to fight in conditions that would kill most galactic species within minutes. Their reflexes were faster than almost any other species. Their endurance was greater. Their capacity for violence had been honed by thousands of generations of survival on a planet that actively tried to kill its inhabitants. "Helm, take us to Helion at maximum speed," Jake ordered. "Tactical, I want all weapons ready to fire the moment we drop out of hyperspace. Load fusion warheads in all missile tubes. Prepare the railguns." Lieutenant Dan Foster nodded from the tactical station. "Aye, Commander. Loading fusion warheads now. Railgun capacitors charging." "Communications. Broadcast a message on all human military channels," Jake continued. "Tell them we're engaging a hostile force at Helion. Any ship that can reach us should come immediately." "Yes, sir," Amy said, her fingers flying across her controls. The Valkyrie dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Helion system. The scene that greeted Commander Jake Morrison made his blood run cold. 12 massive Kresh warships circled the Velar homeworld like hungry predators. Their plasma cannons fired continuously at the planet's surface. Each blast turned the ammonia oceans into clouds of steam that rose into the purple sky. Debris floated everywhere. Pieces of destroyed Valar habitat domes glittered in the light of the system's sun. These domes had been homes to millions of Valar. Now they were just broken metal and shattered glass spinning through space. "Scan for survivors," Jake ordered. His voice was calm, but inside, he felt a burning rage. The Kresh weren't just attacking military targets. They were deliberately destroying civilian areas. This wasn't war. This was murder. Lieutenant Dan Foster worked quickly at his tactical station. "I'm detecting life signs on the northern continent, Commander. About 2 million Valar have made it to underground shelters. But, sir, their defenses are failing. The shelters have maybe 1 hour before toxic gases flood inside and kill everyone. 1 hour." Jake studied the enemy formation on his tactical display. Each Kresh warship was twice the size of the Valkyrie. They were built like hammers, designed to crush enemies through sheer firepower. The Kresh didn't value speed or clever tactics. They believed that overwhelming force was the only thing that mattered. They had never fought humans before. "Load all missile tubes with fusion warheads," Jake commanded. "Helm, take us in at full combat speed. Target their flagship." The crew responded immediately. Every person on the bridge had trained for this moment. They had grown up on Earth, a planet where gravity pulled twice as hard as most alien worlds. They had learned to move fast and think faster. Their bodies were stronger, their reflexes quicker, their minds sharper, because Earth had demanded nothing less for survival. "Course locked in," said the helmsman. "Approaching at full speed." The Valkyrie accelerated toward the Kresh fleet. The ship's speed made alarm signals flash on the Kresh vessels. They had never seen a ship move this fast. Their massive warships began turning slowly to face this new threat, but they were too slow. The Kresh had evolved on a heavy-gravity world, which made them strong but slow. Their ships reflected this. They were powerful but couldn't maneuver quickly. Humans were pursuit predators. For millions of years, human ancestors had chased prey across open plains, running for hours until their targets collapsed from exhaustion. This instinct translated into how they designed ships and fought battles: speed, aggression, and relentless pressure. "In range," Dan announced. "Firing." 20 fusion missiles launched from the Valkyrie's tubes. Each missile carried a nuclear warhead capable of destroying a small city. Right behind them came a barrage of railgun rounds. These tungsten slugs moved at 30% of light speed, turning kinetic energy into devastating impact. The Kresh flagship's shields flared bright blue as the missiles struck. The shields held for 3 seconds. Then they collapsed. The remaining missiles punched through the hull and detonated inside the ship. Nuclear fire bloomed in the vacuum of space. The flagship broke apart, its pieces spinning away in all directions. "Target destroyed," Dan reported. There was grim satisfaction in his voice. "The remaining Kresh vessels are trying to regroup." But Jake knew one dead ship wasn't enough. The other 11 Kresh warships were turning to focus all their weapons on the Valkyrie. This was the dangerous moment. The Valkyrie was fast and well-armed, but it couldn't survive concentrated fire from 11 ships at once. "Evasive maneuvers," Jake ordered. "Keep us moving. Don't give them an easy target." The Valkyrie twisted and dove through space like a bird avoiding hunters. Plasma bolts streaked past, missing by meters. Some found their mark. The ship shuddered as enemy fire struck the shields. "Shields at 70%, called out the engineering officer. "Hull breach on deck 7. Damage control teams are responding." "Keep firing," Jake said. "We need to buy time." The Valkyrie made another attack run, missiles and railgun rounds tearing into a second Kresh vessel, but there were still too many enemies. The Kresh were coordinating their fire now, creating zones where the Valkyrie couldn't dodge. Warning alarms screamed throughout the bridge. Then salvation arrived. 3 more human warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. The Thunderchild, Warhammer, and Razorback joined the battle without hesitation. Behind them came the massive bulk of the carrier Enterprise, and 40 small fighters poured from its launch bays like angry hornets. "About time you showed up, Lisa," Jake said into his communicator. Captain Lisa Grant's voice came back full of energy. "Sorry we're late to the party, Jake. Mind if we cut in?" "Be my guest." The human fleet fell on the Kresh like wolves on wounded prey. The fighters swarmed around the enemy vessels. Their pilots pulled turns and spins that would have made most alien species pass out from the G-forces. Human bodies could handle punishment that killed others. The carrier's mass drivers sent tungsten rods through Kresh hulls like bullets through paper. Each rod was just a solid piece of metal, but when it hit at tremendous speed, it released more energy than a bomb. The Thunderchild specialized in close combat. It charged straight at a Kresh vessel, shields blazing, and unleashed a barrage of plasma cannons at point-blank range. The Kresh ship exploded. The Warhammer and Razorback worked together like dancers, one ship drawing fire while the other attacked from an unexpected angle. Their captains had trained together for years. They knew how to read each other's movements without needing to communicate. The battle became less of a fight and more of an execution. The Kresh had expected to face concordant species who valued life above victory. Species who would try to negotiate, who would hesitate to kill, who would break off combat if they started taking casualties. Instead, they faced Deathworlders who understood that sometimes the only way to save lives was to take them. Humans had learned this lesson through thousands of years of warfare on Earth. They knew that showing mercy to a cruel enemy just meant more innocent people would die. Within 30 minutes, half the Kresh fleet was destroyed. The remaining ships tried to retreat, but human vessels were faster. The fighters pursued them relentlessly, missiles streaking through space. One Kresh captain tried to make it to the edge of the system where his ship could jump to hyperspace. The Warhammer's captain, a cold-eyed woman named Kelly Brooks, wasn't about to let that happen. "Fire all forward batteries," she ordered. A dozen missiles caught the fleeing Kresh vessel just as it began powering up its hyperspace drive. The explosions tore through the engine section. The ship drifted, powerless and dying. "Should we finish it?" her tactical officer asked. Kelly's eyes were hard. "No survivors. No one goes back to tell the Kresh what happened here. Let them wonder." The last missile struck the bridge of the Kresh ship. Atmosphere vented into space, and the vessel went dark. Jake watched from the Valkyrie's bridge as the final enemy ship died. The battle was over. Around him, his crew was exhausted but alive. They had taken damage, but the ship was intact. "Casualty report," he requested. 15 dead, 43 wounded, Amy reported quietly. "We lost a whole section. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Valkyrie 3 days after the battle. Through the main view screen, he watched as rescue shuttles moved between the ship and the Velar planet below. Human medical teams were working around the clock to help Velar survivors. Engineers were repairing the damaged underground shelters. Supply ships had arrived from Earth carrying food, medicine, and temporary housing units. The ammonia oceans still showed scars from the Kresh bombardment. Entire cities would need to be rebuilt, but the Velar were alive, and that was what mattered. "Commander, incoming transmission," Lieutenant Amy Carter announced. "It's from the Galactic Concordate Council itself." Jake felt his jaw tighten. He had been expecting this call. The Concordate Council ran the alliance of peaceful species. They made the laws and decided disputes between member worlds. They had power, but they moved slowly, preferring endless discussion to quick action. "Put them through," Jake ordered. The view screen changed to show the council chamber. It was a massive circular room with seats for representatives from dozens of different species. At the center floated Ambassador Threll, a being made of living crystal who spoke for one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. His body caught the light and threw rainbow patterns across the chamber walls. "Commander Morrison," Threll said. His voice sounded like breaking glass, translated by computers into words Jake could understand. "The Council has reviewed your actions at Helion. We have serious concerns." Jake stayed silent, waiting. He had learned long ago that in politics, the first person to speak often lost. Another council member, a creature that looked like a floating balloon filled with gas, spoke up. "You engaged a Kresh fleet without authorization from this council. You used nuclear weapons against sentient beings. You killed 40,000 Kresh soldiers. Your conduct violates 17 articles of the Concordate Charter." "We saved 2 million Velar lives," Jake replied, keeping his voice level. "At what cost?" Threll demanded. His crystalline form pulsed with agitation. "The Concordate was founded on principles of peaceful resolution. For 300 years, we have maintained peace through dialogue and negotiation. Violence is always supposed to be the absolute last resort." Jake felt anger building in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. It was the last resort. The last resort came when the Kresh started bombing civilian shelters. We answered a distress call. We protected a member species. Isn't that what the Concordate is supposed to do? "You don't understand how the galactic community works, Commander," said another council member, a slug-like creature from a water world. "We are not like your death world. We have maintained peace for centuries because we talk first and fight last. One incident of excessive violence threatens everything we've built. Excessive violence? Jake stepped closer to the view screen, his eyes hard. The Kresh were committing genocide. They were exterminating an entire species, and you're concerned that we used too much force stopping them? The proportional response would have been to establish a defensive perimeter and request negotiations, Threll explained, as if talking to a child. The Kresh could have been convinced to withdraw through diplomatic pressure. Jake couldn't hold back anymore. Ambassador, with all due respect, that's nonsense. The Kresh attacked because they thought you were weak. They've been testing your borders for years, and every time you responded with words instead of action. You proved to them that the Concordat values peace more than justice, that you'll sacrifice innocent people to avoid a fight. The council chamber erupted in angry sounds. Chiming, whistling, and other alien noises filled the air as different species shouted over each other. Some agreed with Jake, others demanded he be punished for disrespect. "How dare you lecture us?" the gas balloon creature shouted. "Humanity has been part of the Concordat for barely 20 years. You know nothing about maintaining galactic civilization." "I know about survival," Jake shot back. "Every human alive today is descended from survivors. Earth didn't give us a choice. We either learned to fight or we died. And we learned that appeasing predators doesn't work. It just encourages them to attack weaker targets." The argument might have continued, but a new voice cut through the chaos. It was Ambassador Millith, the Valar representative. She spoke from a medical tank where she was recovering from injuries sustained during the attack. Her jellyfish-like body floated in cloudy liquid, and her translated voice sounded tired but determined. "The commander is right," Millith said softly. "The council needs to hear this, even if it hurts." The chamber fell silent. "My people trusted the Concordat," Millith continued. "We gave up our weapons. We dismantled our defenses. We did this because we believed in the promise of collective security. We believed that if we were ever threatened, the Concordat would protect us." Her voice became harder. "When the Kresh attacked, we sent distress signals to every Concordat vessel in range. 17 ships received our call. Only one came. Only the humans were willing to bleed for us." Ambassador Threll dimmed slightly, which Jake had learned meant embarrassment or shame. "Ambassador Millith, we were preparing a diplomatic response. The proper procedures take time." 2 million of my people would have died while you prepared," Millith replied. "The Kresh sent us a message before they started bombing. They said the age of peace was over. They said only the strong would survive what was coming. They were testing you, testing all of us, and only humanity passed that test." Another council member spoke up, an insect-like being with multiple eyes. "If what you say is true, then we face a grave crisis. The Kresh Dominion has the third largest military in the known galaxy. If they've abandoned the treaties, if they're preparing for war, then you need allies who know how to fight," Jake finished. "The Concordat has 2 choices. You can punish us for saving lives and prove to every aggressive species in the galaxy that you're too weak to defend your own members. Or you can accept that the galaxy is changing, and peaceful species need warriors to protect them." The council chamber filled with agitated discussion. Some members argued for censuring humanity, others defended the human actions, still others simply looked confused, unable to comprehend a worldview where violence could be the right answer. Ambassador Threll finally restored order. "Commander Morrison, the council will deliberate on this matter. You and your fleet will remain at Helion until we reach a decision." The transmission ended. Jake stood alone on the bridge, wondering if humanity had just made a terrible mistake. They had come to space, hoping to find peace among the stars. Instead, they had found a galaxy that needed them to be what they had always been. Warriors. "Sir," Amy said quietly, "we're receiving messages from other species, not council members, regular people." "What kind of messages?" Amy pulled up the data on a side screen. "Thank you messages, from Velar survivors, from other species who live near Kresh territory. They're saying they feel safer knowing humans are out here. Jake felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. The politicians might debate and argue. The council might pass judgments and write new laws. But the regular people, the ones who just wanted to live their lives without fear, they understood what humanity had done. The Valkyrie had answered a distress call. They had saved millions of innocent lives. And if the council couldn't see the value in that, then maybe the Concordate's problems ran deeper than anyone wanted to admit. Admiral Ben Parker sat in the strategy room deep beneath Earth's Rocky Mountains. The room was cold and quiet, lit only by the glow of holographic displays that showed maps of known space. Red markers dotted the map like drops of blood, each one representing a Kresh fleet movement. There were dozens of them, and more appeared every day. "They're mobilizing everything," said General Kate Morris. She commanded Earth's strategic defense forces and had spent the last week analyzing Kresh military communications. "Every warship from their outer colonies is being recalled. Every reserve unit is being activated. This isn't just retaliation for Helion. This is preparation for a major war." Colonel Ryan Blake leaned forward to study the map. He led Earth's special operations teams, soldiers who specialized in the most dangerous missions. "How long until they're ready to move?" 3 months, maybe 4, Kate replied. "They're not trying to hide it either. They want everyone to see. They're sending a message." "What message?" Parker asked, though he already knew the answer. "That the age of peace is over," Kate said. "They're showing the entire Concordate that they have the strength to do whatever they want." The holographic display shifted to show intercepted Kresh broadcasts. The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear. The Kresh High Command was issuing a formal declaration. They were withdrawing from the Concordate and claiming 17 star systems as their territory. Any ship that entered these systems without permission would be destroyed. Any species that resisted would face the full might of the Kresh military. "It's a declaration of war against the entire Concordate," Ryan said quietly. 40 member species. Hundreds of worlds. Do they really think they can win? "Against most Concordate species?" "Yes," Parker answered. "The majority of member worlds have almost no military. They have police forces and maybe some patrol ships, but nothing designed for real combat. The Kresh have been building their war machine for generations. On paper, they can overwhelm any resistance." "On paper," Ryan repeated with a slight smile. "But paper doesn't account for Deathworlders." Parker nodded. That was the hope. That was the gamble. But Earth's fleet alone couldn't defend hundreds of worlds against the full Kresh military. They needed allies. They needed other species who understood how to fight. As if responding to his thoughts, the door to the strategy room opened. The visitors who entered were not human. Ambassador Millith floated in her portable tank, her jellyfish-like body moving gracefully through the liquid. Behind her came 3 other alien representatives. Parker stood to greet them. He recognized each visitor. Karth was a Kravix, his insect body covered in dark armor plates. He came from a world with gravity 3 times stronger than Earth. The Thorian representative was called Grok, a massive creature covered in thick fur who looked like a cross between a bear and a gorilla. His species came from a frozen world of constant storms. The last visitor was Kira, a Zanari whose body resembled a large raptor with intelligent eyes and sharp talons. Her people were natural predators from a world that circled 2 suns. "Admiral Parker," Millith said through her translator, "thank you for agreeing to meet with us. Ambassador, please sit if your species does that. Otherwise, make yourselves comfortable." The aliens arranged themselves around the strategy table. Karth's multiple legs clicked against the floor. Grok lowered himself onto a reinforced bench designed for heavy gravity species. Kira perched on a high seat that allowed her to look down at the others, a position of status among her people. "We've come to make a proposal," Millith began, "not on behalf of the Concordat Council, but representing our own species. We want to form an alliance with humanity." Parker studied each alien carefully. "What kind of alliance?" "A military one," Karth said. His clicking voice was translated into flat, emotionless words by the computer, but Parker could hear the intensity behind them. "The Council wishes to censure humanity for Hellion. They see your violence as barbaric. But we understand. Our worlds taught us the same lessons as Earth. Survival requires strength. Peace must be defended, not just desired." Grok rumbled in agreement. The sound was so deep it vibrated through Parker's chest. "The Kresh have declared war on the wrong species. They attacked the Valar because the Valar seemed weak. But in saving the Valar, humanity made an enemy of the Kresh. And the Kresh don't understand that humans fight differently than the Council expects." "We want to fight with you," Kira added. Her voice was sharp and clear. "Our species have always been outsiders in the Concordat, too aggressive, too competitive, too willing to use force. But now the galaxy needs us. It needs Deathworlders." Parker felt hope rising in his chest. "What exactly are you proposing?" "A coalition," Millith explained. 5 species who understand that sometimes protecting life requires taking it. We combine our military resources. We coordinate our defenses. We show the Kresh that their war of conquest ends with us." "The Council won't approve this," Parker warned. "The Council lost its authority when it condemned you for saving my people," Millith replied, her voice firm. "We're not asking for permission from politicians who value procedure over lives. We're asking if you'll stand with us." Parker looked at General Kate and Colonel Ryan. Kate nodded slightly. Ryan gave a small smile. They had already discussed this possibility. Earth's military leadership had been preparing for exactly this moment. "What can each of you contribute?" Parker asked. Karth spoke first. "The Kravix have 40 dreadnoughts and supporting vessels. We specialize in swarm tactics and engineering. Our ships are small but numerous, and we can repair battle damage faster than any other species." "The Thorian can field 20 heavy cruisers," Grok said. "Our vessels are built to survive. We fight at close range where our weapons are most effective. We don't retreat, and we don't break." "The Zanari have 50 fighter wings," Kira reported. "Our pilots are natural hunters. We're faster than human pilots in normal space, and we never lose track of prey." "And the Valar?" Parker asked, looking at Millith. "We cannot fight," Millith admitted. "But we can support. We've developed electronic warfare systems that can hide entire fleets from enemy sensors. We can provide supply ships, medical facilities, and repair stations. We may not be warriors, but we can ensure that those who fight for us have everything they need." Parker did quick calculations in his head. Combined with Earth's fleet, this alliance would field over 200 warships and thousands of support vessels. It wasn't enough to match the Kresh in total numbers, but it might be enough to make the Kresh think twice. "The Concordat has kept peace for 300 years through diplomacy," Parker said slowly. "What you're proposing could tear it apart." "The Concordat is already tearing apart," Karth replied. "The Kresh wouldn't dare attack if they thought the Concordat was strong. They saw weakness and decided to exploit it. Our choice is simple. We either stand together and fight, or we fall separately and die." Parker stood and walked to the holographic display. He expanded it to show the entire known galaxy. Hundreds of star systems glowed in the darkness. Each one represented billions of lives. People who just wanted to live in peace. People who couldn't defend themselves against species like the Kresh. "Earth joined the Concordat, hoping to find peace among the stars," Parker said. "We were tired of fighting. We thought we could leave our violent past behind and become something better." He turned back to face the aliens. "But we brought our violence with us anyway, not because we wanted to, but because the galaxy needs someone willing to fight for those who can't fight for themselves." Parker extended his hand toward the aliens. "Let's build something that will make the Kresh regret they ever heard of Deathworlders." One by one, the ambassadors reached out in their own ways. Karth touched his foreleg to Parker's hand. Grok gently pressed one massive paw against Parker's palm, careful not to crush human bones. Kira extended a wingtip. Milith maneuvered her tank close and pressed her body against the transparent wall nearest to Parker. "The Deathworld Alliance," Milith said. "5 species united to protect the peaceful ones." Over the next month, the alliance took shape. Human engineers worked with Kravik's technicians to upgrade weapons systems. Thorian warriors trained alongside human marines, learning each other's tactics. Zanari pilots flew practice missions with a Kresh war machine rolled across the galaxy like an unstoppable tide. In 3 months, they conquered 12 worlds. Each victory made them more confident. Each battle proved what they had always believed. That strength was the only thing that mattered. That fear was a weapon as powerful as any plasma cannon. The Concordate Council met in emergency session after emergency session, but they could agree on nothing. Some wanted to negotiate, others wanted to fight. Most simply wanted someone else to solve the problem. Meanwhile, worlds burned, and millions of aliens fled their homes ahead of advancing Kresh fleets. Admiral Ben Parker watched the reports from Earth Command. Each new conquest made his jaw tighten. But he wasn't preparing a defense. He was preparing a trap. The key to everything was the Helios Gate. It was a natural phenomenon, a region of space where hyperspace travel was easier and faster. Almost every ship traveling between the Concordate core worlds and the outer territories passed through the gate. Control the gate, and you could split the Concordate in half. The Kresh knew this. Intelligence reports showed they were gathering their grand fleet for an assault on Helios Prime, the human colony world that guarded the gate. 200 Kresh warships under the command of war leader Kraxix himself. It would be the largest space battle in 300 years. Parker intended to make it the last battle the Kresh would ever fight. "Are we sure they'll take the bait?" asked General Kate Morris. "They can't resist," Parker replied. "Helios Prime has minimal defenses, just a few orbital platforms and a small garrison. On paper, it's an easy target. The Kresh will see the colony as a prize they can take quickly. And once they commit, we spring the trap." Commander Jake Morrison sat on the bridge of the Valkyrie, watching the Kresh Grand Fleet emerge from hyperspace. The view was terrifying. 200 massive warships appeared in formation, so many that they blocked out the stars behind them. Each ship was a cathedral of weapons and armor, built to crush anything in its path. "All units, hold position," Jake ordered calmly over the command channel. "Wait for the Admiral's signal." Hidden throughout the asteroid field that surrounded Helios Prime were the ships of the Deathworld Alliance. 30 human warships lay silent, their reactors running cold to avoid detection. 40 Kravik's dreadnoughts waited like patient spiders. 20 Thorian heavy cruisers lurked in the shadows of massive space rocks. 50 Zanari fighter wings hung motionless in the void, and wrapped around all of them was the electronic warfare blanket provided by the Velar, advanced jamming systems that made the Allied fleet invisible to Kresh sensors. Technology that the peaceful Velar had developed for scientific research now turned to the purpose of war. The Kresh broadcast their usual ultimatum: surrender immediately or face destruction. When no response came, they began their approach to Helios Prime. They moved in their traditional hammer formation, designed to overwhelm through concentrated firepower. Jake watched the enemy fleet advance. Closer, closer. They were almost in optimal firing range, just a little more. Admiral Parker's voice came through every ship in the Allied fleet, just 2 words. "Light them!" The asteroid field exploded with weapons fire. Railguns launched tungsten rounds at speeds that turned simple metal into planet-killing weapons. Fusion missiles traced brilliant lines across the darkness. Plasma cannons and particle beams from 5 different species converged on the Kresh fleet like the anger of vengeful gods. The first wave of fire destroyed 30 Kresh ships before they understood what was happening. Shields overloaded, hulls ruptured. Ships that had conquered worlds died in seconds without firing a shot. The second wave came from a different direction as Zanari fighters dropped from high orbit. Their pilots screamed battle cries in their own language as they tore through the Kresh formation. Each fighter was tiny compared to the warships, but they were fast and deadly. They targeted engines and weapon systems, crippling ships that survived the initial barrage. War leader Cracksix tried to rally his forces. His voice boomed across Kresh command channels, ordering his ships to return fire and reform their lines. But he had never fought enemies like this. The concordate species he knew were predictable. They fought defensively. They valued their own lives and retreated when battles turned against them. They could be intimidated and overwhelmed. But Deathworlders fought differently. The Thorian ships charged straight into the Kresh formation. They took hits that would have destroyed most vessels, their heavily armored hulls absorbing punishment while they closed to point-blank range. When they got close enough, they unleashed kinetic cannons that could crack a planet. At that range, Kresh shields meant nothing. The Kraviks used swarm tactics perfected over centuries. Their smaller ships coordinated perfectly, surrounding larger Kresh vessels and attacking from multiple angles simultaneously. While the Kresh focused on one attacker, 3 others struck from different directions, and the humans were everywhere. Their ships moved faster than Kresh targeting systems could track. They hit from unexpected angles, exploiting every weakness with ruthless efficiency. Human captains had studied the Kresh for weeks, learning their tactics, identifying their patterns. Now they used that knowledge like a surgeon's knife. Captain Lisa Grant commanded the carrier Enterprise. Her 40 fighters danced through the battle space like birds in a storm. Each pilot pushed their ship to limits that would have killed most alien species. But humans had evolved as pursuit predators, and their bodies could handle G-forces that crushed others. "Blue Squadron, target those engines," Lisa ordered. "Red Squadron, cover them. Gold Squadron, with me. We're going after their command ship." The fighters moved as one, their pilots thinking and reacting faster than most species could process. They wove through defensive fire, each near miss calculated to the centimeter. When they struck with precision that came from endless hours of training in Earth's brutal gravity. Jake Morrison in the Valkyrie led a strike force of 3 human destroyers against a concentration of Kresh battleships. The enemy vessels turned to engage, their plasma cannons charging. But the human ships split formation at the last second, each taking a different angle of attack. The Kresh fired where the human ships had been. Their plasma bolts hit nothing but empty space. By the time they could retarget, the human vessels had already launched their missiles and were accelerating away at speeds the Kresh couldn't match. 12 fusion warheads detonated among the Kresh battleships. When the nuclear fire faded, 4 enemy vessels were gone and 2 more were drifting, powerless and broken. The battle raged for 4 hours. In that time, the Kresh Grand Fleet was systematically destroyed. War leader Cracksix's command ship tried to flee when he realized the battle was lost. The Warhammer, commanded by the cold-eyed Captain Kelly Brooks, made sure that didn't happen. "Full missile spread," Kelly ordered. "I want nothing left of that ship but atoms." 30 missiles caught the Kresh command vessel as it tried to reach the edge of the system. The explosions were so bright that sensors across the battlefield registered the flash. When the light faded, War leader Cracksix and his entire command staff were gone. The last Kresh vessel attempted to surrender. A voice came across the communication channels, begging for mercy in broken concordate standard language. The Kresh crew claimed they had families. They promised to never fight again. They pleaded for their lives. Jake Morrison listened to the transmission. Part of him, the human part that valued life, wanted to accept the surrender. But he remembered the Valar cities burning. He remembered 2 million civilians hiding in shelters while Kresh plasma cannons tried to murder them all. "Admiral?" he asked over the command channel. "Orders." Parker's voice was heavy with the weight of command. "No survivors. The Kresh need to understand that attacking peaceful species brings total destruction. If even one ship escapes to tell the story, the lesson is incomplete." Jake closed his eyes for a moment. Then he opened them and gave the order. "All ships, weapons free. Destroy the remaining enemy vessel." The last Kresh ship died under fire from a dozen different weapons. It broke apart slowly, giving its crew time to understand what was happening, time to feel the fear they had inflicted on so many others. When the battle ended, Admiral Parker received the casualty reports. 2,000 Allied personnel dead, 7 ships destroyed, 15 damaged beyond immediate repair. The numbers were written in blood and sacrifice. But the Kresh Grand Fleet was gone. 200 warships reduced to debris floating in the void. The largest military force the Kresh had ever assembled, destroyed in a single afternoon. News of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than light. The Kresh Dominion's government collapsed within a week. Military officers who understood that continuing the war meant extinction overthrew the civilian leadership. They sued for peace immediately, offering territorial concessions and reparations. The Concordat Council had no choice but to formally recognize the Deathworld alliance. Some species celebrated. Others worried about what it meant to have warrior species united. But everyone understood that the galaxy had changed. Ambassador Millith addressed the Concordat Assembly 1 month after the Battle of Helios Gate. Her voice was strong now, her injuries fully healed. "For 3 centuries, the Concordat maintained peace through promises," she said. "We promised to protect each other. We promised that peaceful species could live without fear. But promises without strength are just words." She paused, looking at the assembled representatives. Species from 100 different worlds, all watching and listening. "The Deathworld species taught us that peace must be defended. That sometimes the only way to preserve life is to demonstrate overwhelming force against those who would destroy it. The Kresh learned this lesson. So did others who were watching, waiting to see if the Concordat was weak." She gestured to where the human, Kravix, Thorian, and Zanari ambassadors sat together. "The galaxy is not safe because we are all friends. It is safe because Deathworlders stand ready to shatter entire worlds to protect the innocent. This is not the peace we wanted, but it is the peace we need." Commander Jake Morrison watched the broadcast from the Valkyrie. The ship was undergoing repairs in Earth's orbital shipyards. New crew members were replacing those who had died at Helios Gate. Soon the Valkyrie would return to space, patrolling the borders, watching for threats. Lieutenant Amy Carter approached with a datapad. "Sir, we've received 17 new distress calls. Pirates, raiders, slavers. They all thought the Concordat was too weak to stop them." Jake nodded slowly. The work would never end. There would always be predators who saw kindness as weakness, always be those who needed protection. "Set course for the nearest signal," he ordered, "and broadcast a message on all frequencies. Tell them the Deathworlders are listening. Tell them we will answer." The Valkyrie powered up its engines and turned toward the stars. Behind it, the rest of the Deathworld Alliance prepared to follow. 5 species united by a simple understanding. That survival was earned, not given. That peace was worth fighting for. That sometimes the only way to protect life was to take it. The galaxy had learned that Deathworlders heard every call for help. And when they answered, worlds shattered before them. The human fighter squadrons. The Valar provided electronic warfare equipment that made Allied ships nearly invisible to enemy sensors. Word spread quickly through the galaxy. Some species applauded the alliance. Others condemned it as warmongering. The Concordat Council remained deadlocked. unable to decide whether to support or oppose the Deathworlders. But the Kresh made the decision for everyone. 3 months after the Battle of Helion, Kresh fleets began moving into disputed territory. They conquered 12 worlds in rapid succession, each time broadcasting their victory to intimidate others into surrender. The message was clear. The Kresh believed they were unstoppable. They thought fear would paralyze the Concordat while they carved out an empire. They had no idea what was waiting for them. Over the next few days, more messages arrived, not just from grateful civilians, but from other species' military officers. Some were subtle, others were direct, but the message was clear. There were other species out there who understood that the galaxy was becoming more dangerous. Species who came from harsh worlds, who knew what it meant to fight for survival. One message in particular caught Jake's attention. It came from Ambassador Karth of the Kravix, an insect species from a high-gravity world. The message was simple and direct. Commander Morrison, my people understand what yours did at Helion. We too come from a world that tests its children with every breath. The Council calls us aggressive and uncivilized because we believe in meeting force with force. Perhaps it is time for the Deathworld species to stand together. We should talk. Jake read the message 3 times. An alliance of Deathworld species. A coalition of warriors who could protect the peaceful members of the Concordat while the Council debated. It was a dangerous idea. It could split the Concordat apart, but after seeing how slowly the Council moved, how unwilling they were to defend their own members, Jake wondered if the Concordat was worth saving in its current form. He forwarded the message to Admiral Parker on Earth with a simple note attached. Sir, things are about to get complicated. When that plasma bolt breached our hull, 15 people. 15 humans who had answered the call to help aliens they had never met, who had died protecting a peaceful species from monsters. Jake felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders. Every death was his responsibility. Prepare rescue shuttles, he ordered. Get our people down to the planet. Those shelters won't hold much longer. Throughout the human fleet, crews scrambled to launch rescue operations. They had come to Helion to fight, but now came the harder work of saving lives. Medical teams prepared to treat Valar survivors, engineers readied equipment to repair the damaged shelters. Jake looked at the ruined planet on his view screen. The ammonia oceans still steamed from the bombardment. Cities lay in ruins. But 2 million Valar had survived because humans had arrived in time, because Deathworlders had heard the call for help and had come running, ready to bleed and die for people they barely knew. The Kresh had learned a lesson today. The Concordat wasn't defenseless anymore, not while humanity stood ready to answer distress calls, not while Deathworlders patrolled the stars. Jake looked at the main view screen, which showed the stars ahead of them. Somewhere out there, 2 million Valar were hiding in shelters, waiting for help that they believed would never come. They had trusted the Concordat's promises of protection. They had given up their weapons and defenses because they believed in peace. But the Kresh had taught the galaxy a harsh lesson. Peace only existed when strong people were willing to defend it. The Concordat Council might spend days debating and discussing. They might form committees and send diplomats. But the Valkyrie would do what humans had always done when innocent people needed help. They would fight. The ship shuddered as it entered hyperspace. The stars on the view screen stretched and twisted into streams of light. In less than an hour, they would arrive at Helion. Jake didn't know if they would survive the coming battle. The Kresh fleet would be larger and stronger, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. The Deathworlders had heard the call for help. And they were coming.